Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Iconic Freedom, The Formula. Here we set a standard for accountability and responsibility, the ownership of your choices and your outcomes and everything that follows. Let each care for self and all will be cared for. So when I talk about the formula, we talk about that periodic chart that you see on the various websites that this is posted on, where you create those elements that come together and bring harmony to your life. And if one of those elements in your life is not working, then you extract it and you reevaluate it and, again, bring that harmony to your life. Not everything deserves a response. And I would say that not every moment requires an explanation. And also I would say that not every silence is weakness. Sometimes silence is the most honest thing left. Today we're going to talk about silence. Not silence as avoidance or punishment or strategy, but more of, in a sense, power, but your own empowerment, your own desire to stand, in your reality. Because there really comes a point in personal development where the noise stops being useful. That you're hearing the noise and you're having to manage it, but there's a point where, enough is enough. And I think, most people don't reach it. But if your goal is to be here and to create this self-development of personal responsibility and accountability, this is an inevitable step that you're going to take. So most people don't speak because something needs to be said. They do speak and they are responding. But sometimes, and a lot of times that I notice, is they speak because the silence makes them uncomfortable. I said that to a colleague this week, is that you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable for a little while until things level out. People, when they feel uncomfortable with that silence, they'll react or they'll start explaining, over-explaining, they'll defend, they'll get into performance in a sense, where they get dramatic about what they're saying. But none of it is to clarify the truth, but it's more to manage the perception of something. And we've talked about that image building, and oftentimes when people are doing that, they're really trying to save their own image rather than the ease of just speaking to reality. Because silence kind of, in a sense, it removes the audience, right? And when the audience is gone, all that's left is you. So you have to stand in the silence, be comfortable with it. Realize that sometimes you don't need to answer. Just because somebody asked a question doesn't mean you owe them an answer. You can shrug and walk away. You could do nothing and walk away. But that's why silence feels threatening to people who don't trust themselves yet. Say it again. Silence feels threatening for people who don't trust themselves. Because if you're filtering everything that you do through that paradigm that you've created, that, is as easy as breathing and blinking your eyes, then you're never concerned about what comes out of your mouth because it's responsible and accountable. So I want to say something. The silence is not withdrawal. It's not compliance. It's not indifference. Silence, in a sense, is a containment, if you will, but it is a powerful decision that you make. It's what happens when you no longer feel compelled to correct, be in self-righteousness, to convince people, to try to manage through manipulation or control, or to justify. And when people justify, they're avoiding responsibility and accountability, or to prove something. And again, prove, that someone might be wrong, or prove, obviously, they're wrong, you're right, all that kind of stuff. But you don't, you don't get quiet because you're weak. You go quiet because there's nothing left to negotiate internally. Said differently, there's nothing else to say. It's been said, it's been observed by you, for you, making choices that feel most comfortable to you because you know it's right for you. So here, I think, is the distinction that people miss quite often, is that silence becomes very powerful when internal conflict ends. When you no longer are wrestling internally with yourself, that's when you realize that the power of silence. And when you're unsure of yourself, boy, silence feels loud because, it's like you feel like you have to fill the gaps, right? It creates a pressure to fill that silence, and it demands the explanation, so you keep talking and talking and talking, sometimes just to hear yourself talk. But when you're aligned, when you're in harmony, when you have order to your life, silence feels very clean. And I'm going to say silence also feels preferred in many situations. And that brings us to confidence. So most people, I think, that they think confidence is something you generate, right? Remember all the self-help books from like the 80s and the 90s, right? They try to think you into existence, that you rehearse it or you perform it or you borrow it from, affirmations of approval. I see people with stickers, for years I've watched this. We're all going to somebody's office and they'll have stickers that say, you're amazing or you got this. I just laugh. I'm thinking that is not going to satisfy the disorder that you feel inside, the lack that you feel inside. Because what is happening is it's all surface and not substance. It's not genuine. It's trying to sham yourself about what you don't have. But how do you get there? Well, that's what you come here for every week, is for us to talk about it, on how you can create that development in your life where you become confident the more you take ownership. So one of the things I want to make sure I touch on, though, is that confidence doesn't come from a belief, because belief is an emotion, right? So when you're in, and we've said it, right? When you're in emotion, you've stepped out of reality, because belief is not based on evidence, right? It's only based on an emotion. I feel like this is correct. If it's a fact, if it's reality, there's nothing to feel. So there's no belief. And that's where I think anxiety starts to begin in people. And trying to speak to reality through emotion, through a belief, reality doesn't respond to a belief, and it doesn't respond, to that emotion. I mean, if you get emotional, yeah, sure, things will happen and you'll have to walk all that back and clean up that schmutz. But reality responds to action, right? That's where the beauty of all of this lies. When people try to anchor themselves in belief instead of alignment, they create that internal contradiction that goes on, right? And that's where all this shenanigans starts happening. What is the alignment? The alignment is the responsibility, the accountability, the harmony, right? All of those qualities. When you bring yourself into alignment and you're living that, that's where you alleviate the contradiction. Contradiction will always create chaos and disorder, not harmony within you. It will always do it, no matter what. And that internal contradiction is always making noise. right? I mean, it's what keeps you up at night, or it's what, pops into your head over and over and over again, and you keep replaying it, and you keep perseverating on something. It's like, because you're living in contradiction, right? And you'll second guess yourself, you'll over explain things, you'll hesitate, you're always looking outside of yourself for, affirmation. But that isn't a lack of confidence. It's a lack of internal coherence. It's a lack of internal harmony. Confidence is the byproduct of making decisions aligned with what's right for you, and then taking responsibility for what follows, right? So that byproduct of making decisions when you say, this is what's right for me, and then taking responsibility for what follows, that's what creates that trust in yourself. And when you trust your decisions, believe me, and not because, they're going to generate comfort, but because moreover, it's what's right for you. Something shifts in you. You're not playing games with yourself. You're saying, no, this is what's right for me. It's not for any other reason other than in my universe, this is what works for me. And then, it's so beautiful. You stop trying to manage people's perception of you, right? You stop trying to rehearse all the outcomes, and you stop negotiating with yourself. And then I think something really important happens is that you observe the results of these choices and outcomes, bringing harmony into your life. The more you do it, the more it comes to you. And then it keeps going in the loop, right? The more you do it, the more it comes to you. The more it comes to you, the more you do it. It's not about like perfection and control, but it's about that alignment, that coherence, that lived evidence that builds trust in yourself. And that trust is what people mistake for confidence. They think, oh, I'm very confident. Are you? Can you walk out onto a stage in front of 1,000 people and just start talking? Do you have to build up your confidence, or do you just know, I know who I am? That what's right for me, I can speak to that. Feels good. Or, that's not something I enjoy. That's not right for me, so I'm not going to do it. This whole conversation about confidence, it's not something that's loud. It doesn't like announce itself, and you definitely don't need, it doesn't need to be defended. It's simply the absence of internal contradiction. So the confidence that you're labeling it is the absence of an internal contradiction. And when that contradiction is gone, silence becomes effortless because there's nothing left to explain. And when I talk about this silence, this isn't something that you use on other people, right? If you're consciously, deciding to use silence on people, I'm just going to be silent with them, then you're still playing games with yourself. Because when the natural part of you is silent, because I have nothing to say about this, I don't need to engage in it, the harmony in my own life means silence in this moment. It's something that emerges when you stop fighting yourself. And when your life stops arguing with your choices, you stop arguing with the world. And that's what I observe. That's what I see, not just about my own life, but about other people. You don't have a reaction. There's no performance to have, right? There's no need to fill a space. It's just clarity. Silence isn't absence. It's presence without distortion of reality, without emotion, without belief. And when you arrive there, you don't even need to announce it. It just happens. You'll know. Because there will be a peace and a harmony that won't require an explanation anymore. So we've talked, about this year, every week having a small little observation of something and being able to look back at it, right? To see the outcome and walk it back to its inception. So where in your life are you just filling space? Not because something needs to be said, but because the silence feels uncomfortable to you. So for this week, my observational homework presented me with a change in my job assignment, where I was promoted, if you will, in a sense to another role than originally I had contracted. And in my way past, I would be uncomfortable talking about the increase in salary or the promotion itself. However, this time I just allowed my silence. I didn't intentionally do it. It just happened. I was silent. I listened. I allowed my silence to absorb the moment and the observation, kind of allowing the client to talk directly to me about it. And in the end, it was amazing. So, yeah, my salary increased per week for this assignment. And I was thinking as I walked away, you got to love the way the universe will manage these things if we just get the heck out of our own way. And I didn't even have to ask or feel awkward for asking. Life presented, I listened, and then I allowed. And it wasn't about, I'm confident in what I do, absolutely, because I know what I do is with integrity. Okay, we are at the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Hit that like button if you would. Share it with your family and friends. You never know how it might support them in their endeavor. All the fun links are below, and if you're inclined, feel free to subscribe on Buzzsprout. I'm on X and Truth Social, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. The link to my new book, The Christmas Cookie, Stories from the Counter, still available on Amazon and Lulu.com. Those links are down below. And until next time, stay sharp, stay sovereign, and as always, remember, let each care for self, and all will be good.